Welcome everyone. This is Conversations That Mind and Matter, and with us is Zara Altair, Kristin Drysdale, Grizwald, and me, John Kellden. This 1 hour send is called Adventure, and that means sort of going slightly outside the comfort zone. And since I'm kind of feeling particularly generous today, here's the takeout. I'm doing this all in reverse order. Now, to get all of you fellow Google Pluses audience or whatnot you are, slightly more adventure ready. You could call yourself adventure prone if you will. Here's 4 points. It will sort of guarantee you sort of to kickstart your next adventure. Point 1. Come up with 10 ideas every day. It's going to be a bit painful, but it's worth it. Point 2. Write them down. Any kind of notepad, pen and paper, anything will do. The blog, right? 3, which is good with the blog, right? Because then you can press publish or something, right? Then you should share it with the world. Step 4 is the most interesting one, at least I think so. Your narrative assessment. So your narrative assessment basically means not beating yourself down for having done the previous 3 points, and then you're basically back to square one again. So because the next day you will come up with 10 new ideas. Now, it doesn't really matter what ideas they are, as long as you do them, and 10 new ones every day, because it will bring you slightly outside your own comfort zone is where magic happens. Okay, so I'm actually kind of excited what that actually might sort of bring to any unsuspecting audience and participant and whatnot. So that was pretty much what I wanted to say today. So, Sarah, would you?
All right, thanks everybody. No.
like to take it from there?
Well, I just thought that Kurt Vonnegut said that about being outside your comfort zone is where the magic happens, and he said that about writing. That when you push yourself in writing and you push your story concept, that's when the magic happens with the story. And I think that's true in our lives as well. When we go and we discover new things, whether it's online or going on, what people often think of as traditional adventures, going somewhere they haven't been before. Our family, we like to do what we call mini adventures, which is day trips and going places, and it's just new. It's new. It's seeing things in a new way, and that's often where those ideas come from. You're out in a different environment, and all of a sudden an idea comes to you. It frees up the mind. I find that happens a lot. That when I'm out and I'm in a different environment, not my regular normal place where I am, new ideas just start flooding in, actually.
I mean, that's a great way to sort of lead your life, right? I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, Grizwald, I wanted sort of to give the mic to you then, because I mean, this particular send is kind of I almost see as the sort of the main character, right? Because Grizwald, right? I mean, that is a whole adventure right there, right? Encapsulated in. Is it a name? Is it a moniker? Is it a?
I lean towards digital persona. I like to think that you are where your attention is, and every time I'm staring into a screen, I can let go of everything behind me, all the context of my real world, and that frees me, using the NIM frees me from all the baggage that my meat space life has. So when I'm online, I get to be more of who I want to be, because I don't have to concern myself with all the other contextual nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, there's an interesting thing here with possibly at the risk of completely messing up this poor little send. In another thread, was in early today, we came into analog digital signals and semiotics and the shuhari of personal evolution, all rolled into one, because that's just how I want to do things, right? So the first level is then basically, what do you mean digital self? So we need to sort of understand that some of the time a cup of coffee is just a bloody cup of coffee, right? I mean, it's just kind of stuff, right? And it's just normal, right? Some of the time, I hope. And then level 2 is when you apply lots and lots of design, right? Top 10 shortcuts to instant fame and fortune and stuff, right? Or SEO, or strategies, or social media marketing, or I mean, all of that. I mean, actually, if you're a woman, that's creativity. If you're a man, and slightly a bit more boring than women, you usually call it design. I mean, men without a tie, and if you're a man with a tie, which is kind of towards the deadly boring part, you call it innovation. It's actually kind of all the same thing, right? So, and I have kind of a personal theory, right, that men with ties sometimes sort of strangle the blood flow from the heart up to the head, right? So kind of, and hence kind of the gradual sort of boredomification from creativity to design to innovation. So you could say that innovation is kind of level 1. So this sort of journey, this adventure, is for men to do, sort of saying yes to their own inner woman, right, inner female, right, which is kind of scary. I mean, but all good adventure has sort of some scary parts, right? And I don't mean that they should sort of be clad in leotards or begin to say, I mean, I'm fond of the Louis C.K. skit, right, where he meets a neighbor of his in New York, and the neighbor has kind of very, very short neon, and a way too short t-shirt, a man. And whenever that man meets Louis C.K. and says, hello, and Louis C.K. knows that he's a good neighbor, I mean, he's a good man, right, and the other one, and he just can't help laughing, right? And the other guy just gets distraught every time, right? But being the good neighbor is kind of the next day they meet kind of over the groceries and he says, hello, and he Louis C.K. laughs, right? And but he knows that both these guys are actually good, right? But they have it right in the middle of New York City, kind of one huge sort of adventure, right? So the thing is, if we only do things which we only are certain about, which we know with precision, right, then there's not going to be any adventure, right, ever. So going wild with your inner persona, or with what you do, or as I did in the 90s, I drove around with a roadmap for 1972, which was obviously bonkers. I mean, you can't do that because some of the roads had actually changed, and we drove on a completely wrong road, and we just happened to stumble upon one of the best coffee shops ever, right? Because we were in a completely different place than we thought we were, right? So yes, I should have obviously sort of thrown that 1972 roadmap out and sort of bought. I mean, I'm Swedish after all, so this is kind of this won't do, right? I mean, I should have kind of the new one, right? But we would have missed that coffee shop, right? So, yeah. Kristin, and if you, there you are.
Hey there.
Adventures. I mean, you haven't had any adventures in your life whatsoever, right?
No.
No.
I've led a fairly boring life up till now.
Yeah. I like that smile at the end.
Kind of like the Cheshire Cat, maybe.
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't vanish, right? So, but in a way, this is also kind of an adventure, right? I mean, the four of us are I mean, 2 men and 2 women, more or less, right?
Yeah.
Slightly different ages. We just sort of erred on the side of safety a bit, right? Because there's actually 3 people from US, I think, and I'm not, right? So if there's people from US tuning in, hi, you're in safe hands because there's 3 of your compatriots here to take sort of good care of you, right? So just ignore the crazy guy from Sweden. But if you want to amp up adventures, then yeah, you could say that if you want to sort of put, I was toying with that if I would sort of wanted to do that, right? But for the sake of the interest of audiences, right? Here follows kind of a brief description. If you want the wise ones, you should obviously kind of hire and consult with Zara, right? If you want to be clued up on how to sort of kind of shortcuts towards fame and fortune by being very, very nice and friendly, genuinely nice and friendly, and Kristin is the go-to person, right? If you want to have really, really good, meaningful, profound, different perspectives, including kind of turning yourself into kind of a character in a wonderful story, then Grizwald Grimm, you can almost hear that, right? That's your man, right? I'm actually kind of boring, but I do have one kind of quality, right? I have the gift of gab, right? And I have the 10 million view count to prove it. So if that is kind of sounds like fun, then yeah, I can sort of clue in on one thing or two, right? Including sort of breaking most of the rules. But, well, yes, that's kind of a bit of an adventure. So now you know exactly who we are. So it's just that life seen as an adventure, we can't sort of be fully sure, right? I mean, all the 4 of us in the conversation Minor Matter, kind of next month we'll be all joined Hare Krishna, right? So that'll obviously be an adventure, and our planned kind of send next month will be all about collections, which I'm happy to sort of have your questions in the common thread even now, so we can prepare a fantastic send next time. But if we have joined Hare Krishna almost by then, we will sort of give a very, very different spin on those collections, right? So I hope we will not have done that, right?
John, someone in the audience, Kim Boltman, has something to add here, and she says, "Uncertainty is the story of my life. It's an interesting life." I love that perspective.
Yeah,
because uncertainty pushes you outside of that comfort zone. As long as uncertainty is there, that you don't know what is exactly going to happen. It isn't predictable.
Yeah.
And I think that adds the interest, as Kim says, the interest in life.
Yeah. I mean, to me it signals that Kim is both a wise and a brave woman, right? Because she has sort of embraced uncertainty. I mean, it's kind of what it says in the books, right? Embrace uncertainty and rise to fame and fortune, and I mean, variations. And you could do the sort of Seth Godin purple cow version or anything else, right? But actually, those guys are actually not all that courageous because they're just sort of telling about it in the books, right? If you would meet him, he would probably be deadly boring, right? So the adventure is actually to sort of figure these things out without books, right? Just sort of to, and I mean, thanks, Kim, because this is a great gift to the Send, right? Interestingness, well, it sort of cuts both ways, right, in the networks, right? We have, and again, Louis C.K., right, which is kind of an adventurous soul. He said a skit once that everything is amazing and no one bloody cares anymore. So if we show sort of pictures and tell amazing stories and wonderful graphs and diagrams and stuff, a lot of people these days are kind of, boring. I've seen it on Tumblr already, right? So that kind of gives us it makes it even more important, right, to go exactly as Kim says, kind of to follow that, to see that again and again and again, right? It is what sort of makes it interesting, right? Because I do understand also, and that's probably my Swedish genes. It says kind of, yeah, as long as there's coffee, right? I'm all game, right? So
You know what? We have another comment, and this one's from Peter Hatherley. And he is playing with words, as is his wont. And he says, adventures. So ADDVENTURES, adventures. And I like that because it's adding.
yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean the more thing, right?
More, yes.
Yeah, I mean that's what I meant. Right? I didn't want to sort of diss all men. I actually kind of part of the evil part of me wanted to do that, obviously, right? But to let go of the enormous pressure from that tie, that sort of corporate suit, right? And the kind of suit that almost sort of grows like an extra layer of skin, right? So, and it kind of, if it stops part of the flow from the heart to the brain, you tend to grow accustomed to that, right? So you kind of shrink your life. So suddenly everything actually can be controlled. Almost you can put your whole life in a spreadsheet, and you can kiss your wife once a week whether she likes it or not, right? So go slightly outside. And this is actually kind of a clarion call to men, right? Because adventure. I mean, imagine a venture capitalist who actually would be adventurous, right? Who actually would like to take a risk and not just sort of be appallingly treat people appallingly bad just because they happen to have great ideas, right? So now I'm kind of actually dissing all venture capitalists as well, right? So kind of I need to check my mood. I don't want to be too adventurous here to just sort of alienate all the people in the audience, right? As long as I only alienate men, I think we're fine, right?
Well, if there's any venture capitalists in the audience, I would like to say the reviews of John do not necessarily reflect on me. Let's talk privately. I think I have an adventure for you.
Yeah. And if you kind of offer a sufficient amount of funding, I will sort of immediately retract the things I just said, right? So, yeah. But it's actually kind of a deep, significant thing here with what Peter said, right? Because if you, and what he did, right? He played with words, right?
Exactly.
Is that allowed? Yes.
Absolutely.
So, and I mean, this can't be translated because it's in Swedish, right? My older brother. He said, "Mom, here you have me quickly." I mean, I'm botching the joke completely. But it would actually be fun in Swedish. Just that you don't speak Swedish, which is kind of, I should probably tell it in Swedish, but that would be too big of an adventure. So you kind of, whoa, what's John going on about now? Is that Swedish? So Mum loved that joke. She told it a couple of thousand times to the sheer horror of my older brother. I mean, because he was just 3 years old, right? And when he got to be 30, it wasn't really fun anymore. But for us other siblings, it kind of was, right? So we used to play with words, and I mean, English for me is kind of a adventure piñata, right? English is one of the most weird contraptions there ever was. So, I mean, you could say strategy, right? That's a really, really weird word, right? So, Eddie Izzard, for instance, he did a skit, right, when he said, "I claim India," and he cuts his English voice, right? Really, and then he kind of stands on the other side and says, "You can't bloody claim us. We live here." And then he says, "Do you have a flag?" So now the weird part is that actually happened, right? Yeah, of course they could claim India, right? They couldn't care less that there actually was people lived there that wasn't sort of British. any which way, right? So it was just a huge adventure, and the whole British Commonwealth. And then they lost the whole effing empire straight after
Yeah, they did.
Second World War, right? So, and then they left the baton to Americans, and you did all the whole the bluster and the fury and the singing and the dancing and the 200 military stations, and now you're going almost bankrupt. So now you
we can't go bankrupt. We write the checks.
Oh, come on, Grizz.
Petrodollar and all that.
No, I mean, but for everyone else outside America, it's kind of an adventure to look at it, right? What's happening, right? So, I promised myself I shouldn't go into politics. I won't, right? But politics, right?
I can change the subject because Wake has a really great point. I just love this. I love this. Wake says, greatest problem facing humanity now is loss of wonder. We don't seem to wonder about things anymore, John. The youngsters seem to suffer more as a result. There was a post which I read which talked about a 9-year-old trying to harm himself fatally. They feel bored. That is the biggest problem facing the world.
Yeah.
And a sense of wonder is so important to me. It's just so important because it's how it opens up our way of receiving information from the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I immediately come to think of one of your posts you shared, Sarah, and it was about you in the park playing with one of your grandkids, I think.
Oh, right.
And I mean, I can almost tear up even thinking about that blog post, right? Because what I saw in that child, in every movement and the gaze, and damn, that was a good blog post.
It's because she does that wonder right on the spot, and she says, okay, and then everything, all of the parameters changed in the game, and then there were the magic stones, and which she gave to each person in the game, and it all just sort of all came together. But I wanted to go back for a moment to Wake's point about wonder, because I had when I worked in poetry schools for 10 years and worked with people of all ages. I mean, I worked with preschoolers up to teachers who came to university to learn how to teach poetry to children. And the sense of wonder is so important. And one of the most upsetting times for me, actually in my entire life, I was in a classroom and I brought a poem by Rimbaud in English, and so the kids were we had talked about metaphor before. They were to pick something beautiful in their life and then describe it in metaphorical terms. Because he had described his front porch in terms of precious stones. And I spent 90 minutes going around this classroom with big floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out on this beautiful meadow with the tall, tall pine trees and redwoods in the back. And I spent 90 minutes going around one-on-one talking to 8- and 9-year-olds who said, I can't think of anything beautiful in my life. And I was just...
Yeah.
So my heart was breaking. I don't know how else to say it. That an 8-year-old cannot think of anything. All they had to do was look out the window. And speaking of America, to me, our culture does a lot to not foster gender. And I call it noticing the beauty of what is now and what is right there, present in front of us.
Yeah. I mean, there's a good thing with Americans, right? It's your laughter is always very close. I mean, I'm kind of almost the exception to the rule, right? I'm from the North Sweden clan, which sort of are not depressed, right? So there's lots of the Ingmar Bergman kind of vibe in Sweden, right? So if you think kind of Ingmar Bergman is kind of very dark and very depressed and kind of very serious and kind of no, he's just Swedish, right? So, but even deeper, you have this sort of enormous joy in almost everyone from Sweden. Not sure why, right? We 500 years ago we killed all the boring guys, right? So there's nothing left in the gene pool from that, right? So I'm not sure what happened, but and obviously the kind of the weather, right? We have sort of 6 months of winter, so that's kind of where we go sort of bipolar, right? I'm seriously depressed for 6 months, and then we're kind of very, very happy and joyful for. I mean, we pretend that it's kind of 6 months of summer, but it's actually just 3 weeks, right? So then we sort of get depressed again, right? Because kind of that's how it is, right? I mean, everything's perfect in Sweden except for the weather. It's just bloody cold all the time. But there's also a good thing, and kind of the telling of stories. I mean, this is kind of actually a serious cause for concern in Sweden right now, because kind of the young ones have stopped telling and listening to stories. So there's kind of a huge kind of resurgence of trying to sort of get that back to kids, because when I was young, every last single person from Sweden knew 100 different folk tunes, right? So if we gathered in some kind of officious capacity, someone could just, and with a slight provocation, we just started to sing. And still one of the most popular TV shows in Sweden is kind of when everyone just gathers, and everyone just, including everyone in the audience, just sings, right? So this is normal for Sweden, right? I mean, seriously depressed people at slightest provocation just can break out in singing, right? Well, not dancing, because that would be completely un-Swedish. We don't do that, right? Unless we have sort of lots and lots of alcohol sort of inside us, and then we can dance as well, right? Not well, but we can dance. So, but this goes back to, again, playing with words, the Peter thing, logic itself, kind of there. The sense of wonder. I think his name is called John Koenig. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but he has made a website which I urge everyone to actually go look at, and it's called The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. And he's made up a word, and one of the, I mean, lots of words, and one of the words is called sonder. So I'm not going to give away too much of the plot, but here's another way to sort of play with words, right? So these two words are resonant, right? Not only in terms of how they're pronounced, but also on a deeper level. So, and if I remember correctly, I think he's an American, right? So kind of kudos to you, Americans, for sort of having spawned one of these guys who can just do something silly and profound as that, right? So, and I mean, the adventure doesn't always have to be grand, right? Sometimes the adventure can be something very, very almost invisible, right? I mean, instead of scolding a kid, you can turn it into something good, something different, something better, right? Instead of looking at kind of someone on the street, which is obviously drunk and possibly dangerous, so let's just ignore that that's a human being, you could basically just give him a couple of, sure, not too much money, right? Because then he starts liking you and following you around. That would be creepy. Right? So can you just throw him a couple of, enough for a coffee at least, right? I actually saw a picture yesterday, which was lovely, right? I mean, sad and lovely at the same time. So there was this kind of hobo on the street, right? And he just held up a sign, and it wasn't kind of, help, please, bless your heart. it was just kind of, I'm not going to lie to you. I want to have money for beer. And it's such a sort of profoundly human thing to do, right? He had his sense of humor, his sense of adventure, his sense of self-worth, a sense of dignity, and he was living on the street, right? So we really don't have that in Sweden, right?
You don't have people living on the street in Sweden? Is it too cold?
Well,
Are they not adventurous enough?
no, I mean, in Sweden we have a kind of healthcare is free, social welfare is free, schools are free, university degrees you can have for free, and obviously all those are great things, and you can do wonderful things, right? And you can sort of just kickstart yourself into your deep, true, meaningful adventure if you want to, right? But some of the most adventurous souls in Sweden are now living in Tokyo, London, New York, and San Francisco, right? So,
Speaking of Tokyo, we have someone here who may want to introduce herself. And we should maybe ask JD if she would like to introduce herself as well. Do you mind if we cut in and take a little excursion?
Yeah, hi JD, and this is my first time to see you. I am from Tokyo, and there's a lot of Swedish here living in the big cities, which I actually bumped last year, I think. There's a couple of businessmen, travelers from all over the world that is here right now. And they're taking adventure trips, which for their own purpose sake, which I don't know. I don't want to discuss that. That's their problem, not mine. But still.
What is an adventure trip? You don't have to discuss it, but what is it?
Adventure trip? Oh, my best ever. If I'm going to have only one wish, and it will be fulfilled, I would like to go to the moon for travel.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my first wish on the bucket list. There's something up there is quite very fascinating for me, and which very intrigues me a lot. That's why that's on my bucket list right now. It will take me a little, years to fulfill that, but for sure it will be worth it.
And that's an adventure trip?
It is an adventure trip, since you have to have the full training for NASA and everything. For here, it's JAXA, the JASA, for the astronaut first training programs and everything. And it's quite a tough deal, but it will challenge you much more about your mindset and everything, and what your concepts are upon reaching the place, and that will be turned 180 degrees. And most of the time, I think a lot of that words are used. Really, you can see a lot of videos from YouTube or everything that astronauts are connected directly for their families and everything, just to be connected. And I want to try that experience in a different way, in a different level, and that's what I keep on trying to do right now.
Yeah, I think that's great, because for me, obviously this is just my opinion, right? It doesn't really matter, right? What kind of dream, what kind of vision, what kind of bucket list we have. With all normal standards is kind of, no, you should just clear that straight off your bucket list, because that is clearly impossible or will not happen once in a million or things like that. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut, right? So I was devastated when I learned that, because I had kind of a severe kind of nearsightedness, so the kind of, that's at least that sort of ruled me out completely. So I couldn't even be a bloody Air Force pilot, right? Which was kind of my fallback option, right? And then I mean, I was 5, right? So then I learned all the names of all the airplanes in World War II instead, right? I mean, this doesn't make any sense, but it made back then. I mean, this is kind of some years ago, right? So, and I basically never stopped sort of figuring out names of sort of airplanes ever since, right? So it sort of got me on some kind of path, right? Some kind of a life adventure. Sad to say, I've actually sort of forgot most of the names of those airplanes. I mean, there was kind of the Fiesler Storch, right? Somehow I always remember that plane, right? Because it's a tiny little plane. It was such a tiny little thing, so it was kind of very silent to be for an airplane, right? So it could fly very low under the radar and then sort of whisk back and forth spies, right? So, I mean, that is obviously also an adventure, right? I mean, how could you even come up with sort of, yeah, when I grow up, I want to be a spy, right? Okay, so when someone will kind of find you out, you will be killed or put away for the rest of your life, and yeah, sounds great, right? Let's do that, right? So, I mean, but to return to the astronaut thing, some of us actually make it, right? I think his name is Hadfield, right? Possibly he's from Canada or some weird place, right? And whilst up in space, he just had managed to bring a guitar. I mean, imagine kind of space suit and guitar. I mean, that's kind of just standard gear, right, for an astronaut, right? So, and he sang Space Oddity, and he actually sang it really well, right? And possibly some of us have even heard it, right? Because it's kind of just a. So there we are, a guy from Canada, when his kid wanting to be an astronaut, and also kind of wants to bring the guitar, sing Space Oddity, because right before that, a couple of decades earlier, a crazy guy from England has sort of changed names to David Bowie and crams out really weird songs, right? So, and I mean, we can sort of factor in that, yeah, David Bowie, yeah, I heard all his songs, yeah, boring. But actually, when he started those songs, I mean, Space Oddity, I think, from 1972, it was quite spectacular, right? And then it kind of followed his, not sure if you've seen his suits, right? Talking about sort of embracing his own kind of Jin female side, right? I mean, when I grow a little bit older and a little bit more adventurous, I will probably try on some spandex, right? Just to sort of see how it feels like, right?
Whoa!
I haven't really gotten so adventurous yet, right? So
yes, that's a little excessive on the adventure for this episode, don't you think?
Okay, that was our limit. Oh, that's good.
I'm gonna bounce it over to JD and see what adventures she's been on lately now.
Hi everybody. Hi. I haven't got a chance to John in 8. I just realized, you know what is an adventure? Because I'm not going to babble. Google Plus is an adventure. Because in my circle apocalypse, I see now that I swept some people away that I didn't mean to. So that was an adventure. Also, turning 50, that was an adventure. I haven't celebrated yet. I haven't had a party. I haven't done anything. I don't care if I'm 50. I'm gonna celebrate. I guess what adventurous thing I've ever done is, as it currently is, leave it. But I have children who have futures. I have to guide. I can't. And so looking for some adventure displacement, because I need for adventure, which is real, but combined with poor impulse control, something strange could happen. So that's where I am on the adventure scale. I just need to like keep it, because I really want some adventure and I want it now. So,
well, let's hear it first for poor impulse control. I'm a big fan. I can relate.
Quicker than anything else.
I can relate to G+ being an adventure.
No, I mean, but
for me,
Yeah.
The
Yeah, I
nothing
mean,
can
go ahead,
change your
Grizwald.
life faster than a new person coming into it. And here, online in general, and G Plus specifically, people from all over the world can come into your lives. Like, people from Sweden and Japan and Oregon and Arizona have come into my life from being here. So I think that we're all on this digital. I'm really hating the word digital, but I don't have a replacement for it yet. This
I
digital
like the
adventure
word.
that we're on
We
is.
call it, Griswold, we call it the virtual world.
Oh, I don't like virtual either.
Yeah, I don't like that either. That
Yeah,
sounds like
I
it's
know,
fake.
I know, but I know a lot of people hates the virtual stuff because it's always there. But for me, I break the habit of being virtual used, which is I usually use as what you call this an interaction live, which is more on the real thing in the real stuff, and that's what I'm using right now.
I mean, this is kind of also kind of almost a miracle, right? I mean, we're kind of sitting here as if there's nothing to it, right? Speaking with people clear across the planet. And I mean, the weird adventure part of my mind just came up with, well, let's call it an MMA instead, right? Kind of a massively multiplayer adventure, because it is, right? And we could steal that kind of acronym away from kind of the
Mixed
martial arts, right? Because that is clearly much more boring than what we do. I mean, it's actually fun for them, right? And they can sort of try to kill each other without actually killing each other, which is kind of weird. But everyone is sort of duking it out, right? With their own sort of digital self, right? With their own virtual self, with their own sort of. I mean, if we admit it, right? I mean, it takes a bit of an adventure and a bit of kind of courage to sort of admit it that we're kind of prettifying ourselves a bit on these digital spaces, right? Trying to look nice and well, okay, yeah. That didn't really work, but at least I tried, right? So, and then the weirdest thing of all is that kind of a virtuous cycle, right? In between kind of my old sort of crappy analog embodied self and kind of slightly spiffed, more handsome, more popular, or whatever I am, right? I mean, I'm really not sure these days what my digital self is up to, right? He seems to be really popular, right? And I mean, when I kind of fire up the laptop in the morning, and some people have sort of connected with me clear across the planet, and they want to sort of ask me things or tell me things and share things, and it is kind of an adventure, right? So, I mean, I'm really, really happy with the notion that we actually can connect, right? So it's just that I'm kind of on a quest, right, on my own little private adventures, kind of having people do slightly less of the cat gifts and the selfies and the content marketing, right? Not that those are kind of bad, but those are just 3 of the beginning moves in the massively multiplayer adventure. So, I mean, to sort of let that out for just more sort of public consideration, right? Grizwald and I are actually going to sort of start some kind of an alternate world, right, game, where we're going to explore the 4th and the 5th and the 6th and the 7th move, right? In addition to
Fun.
Yeah. So when we get to the 11th move, I think it is, or the 12th, or somewhere, that's going to be when we sort of grow skilled enough to have this dialogue between our analog and our digital selves to be able to throw fireballs, which will be posts, comments, something that will be so amazingly adventurous and spectacular and amazing and awesome that it will sort of make an immediate difference. So here is where lack of impulse controllers actually will be a good thing. Right? Actually, in the green room before this, and Griswold and I talked about we should be kind of Griswold, and I might be Wonko the Sane, and any other kind of moniker we sort of come up with, which is cool, right? I happen to like Wonka the Sane a lot. And then I said to Grizwald, possibly in this alternate timeline, different world, which we're going to live inside Google Plus community, and then on kind of where it goes, some kind of adventure. So everyone will have monikers except the Koch brothers. They will be the same in the alternate timeline as well. And then Griswold and I figured out that they probably are meant to be there. So there was just this cosmic accident. So they found their way over here as well, right? Because they clearly don't play according to the rules we have, right? So that's kind of just a glimpse of the possibilities you can do when you sort of see life as an adventure. So what was it we're going to sort of put, right? In the corner of Google Plus Avenue and Bluehead Alley, right? There's a laundromat. So I mean, there's it is a place, right?
That's the rub, I think, is taking a virtual place and making people realize that it is a place. I mean, people will say they're on a social network, but most of them don't realize that they're on it. It's like their attention self is there, and that's what I hope to teach people through that particular adventure.
Through rubbing?
What? Rubbing?
You said that's the rub.
Oh. Go to the laundromat.
Just trying to bring a little bit of adventure in here.
No, I mean, but in such a world, right, you can have, obviously we need the coffee shop, right next to the laundromat, because everyone knows that that's very convenient, right, to have a laundromat right next to the coffee shop and vice versa. But then, just a couple of blocks away, there's a man in High Castle, right? And if you want to be clued in which particular timeline you actually belong and why, and if you can switch, right, someone away from your slightly more boring self to a slightly more adventurous one, you can go there and he will clue you in, right?
It's a lot of people need a catalyst to go on an adventure. Like you could say that good old Bilbo needed the catalyst before he went on the adventure, and to be of service to somebody in that way is a role I wouldn't mind helping people with, because ultimately we're all on an adventure from birth to death. It's a journey, and if you can sit in your house and stay safe on your adventure, but at the end of the adventure, all you have is where you've been. And,
do you all know Nomad Dimitri? Have you all followed him, Nomad Dimitri?
I haven't been exposed.
I just need to share this real quickly. I had been so envious of him because he's all over the world, and he collects these beautiful shots everywhere from Dubai to Mumbai. And early this week, he indicated that he had been running from cancer, and he is going to be, I think after a certain point, go back for testing to see if you are in remission or completely cured. And I had a moment because I'm envious of very little. I used to look at this man's photographs and think, wow, what it would be like to just chuck everything and just be a nomad. And then I find out the reason that he had done so is because he was fulfilling his bucket list. He is fulfilling his bucket list, and he won't know in the week what's the outcome of all his headspace. I covet is to go all over the world, to being grateful that I didn't have the reason he had to do that. So I just wanted to toss that in there because it was a completely disorienting experience for me. It really was. I went from being envious to being ashamed to being hopeful for him.
Yeah. I mean, we simply don't know, right? I mean, actually, Heidegger knew, right? I mean, the German philosopher, and he went ahead being very German. He called it Geworfenheit. Right? So I'm just going to toss that out, and because it's kind of actually the deep true, significant, meaningful, and I mean, if John says, "Yeah, I'm a philosopher," then it's sort of bloody well that's so, right? So it's just that also then the American philosophers had a bit of a field day before they actually could figure out how are we going to translate that, and they ended up with thrownness. So there actually been American philosophers having spent years and years, and some of them half their life, figuring out what's Geworfenheit, right? And then they kind of just, they are feeling very smug now, and then for the rest of us to figure out, okay, so what's thrownness then, right? So if I would sort of attempt some kind of and do some serious disservice of all the philosophers in the world, it's kind of when you're just feeling thrown right out there in life. Oh, did I get an instruction manual? No. So you just had to wing it. Yes. That's sort of thrownness, right? But then I want to throw in another kind of old geezer, Fritjof Nilsson Piraten. It's actually kind of just a made-up word. He actually called him, the real name was Fritjof Nilsson, a Swedish author, very loved one. And when he was young, he was told that he had cancer. He just had a couple of months more to live. And being who he is, he just thought, what the hey? So he spent those couple of months in the summer reading the funnies, right? Fun books, fun skits, fun, anything he could get hold of that was funny, right? Then he went back to the doctors in the autumn, and all signs of cancer was just gone, right? There was nothing, right? No, he was sort of deemed terminal, right? And then he went on to live kind of like to be, I'm not sure, 75, 80, kind of way old, right? So, crammed out a lot of books, and you can almost hear in the books that, hey, I got another spin here, right? I got a free turn. So let's bloody make the most of it. And then there's another guy, Buckminster Fuller, right? He made a decision very consciously in a fairly young age that, hey, I could sort of decide to live as if I'm going to make a difference. And then he just did, right? And he invented lots of crazy stuff that everyone thought was, whoa, that's way out there, right? I mean,
like the dome.
Yeah, the Bucky Dome, right? I mean, the foolery, and I mean, he just went all over the place and was just sort of completely crazy and just broke all possible rules for what you could do, what you shouldn't do, and everything, right? And now we're kind of glad he did, right? And then
yes, John Kellden, I have a Kellden question. A question only you can answer about that. Now, taking the geodesic dome, every point of connection in a geodesic dome, wouldn't you have a holographic view?
Yes, just that you first have to let go of all the Cartesian stuff inside the mind, right? Which is very, very difficult. So, I mean, you know the songs, right? Everyone knows that. It's hip to be square. It's just that
yes.
You said it's not, right? So, if you can sort of get unsquare a bit, right? You can actually see that the Bucky coordinates actually makes more sense than sort of the square ones, right?
Right.
Yeah. So,
and I always thought if you put cameras at those Bucky points, you would have a 360-degree view. If the cameras could move,
yeah,
you would have a mobile holographic view. But I'm not John Kellden, so when I say stuff like that, people go, meh.
Well, this is kind of what I want to sort of issue as kind of a general permission slip, right, to you and to everyone else listening to this, right? Hear ye. John Kellden is now offering a universal permission slip. Go ahead and do whatever damn well you please, as long as it kind of stems from the core of your heart, right? And if someone sort of says anything against that, you can just send them to me, and I will give them some real dose of whoop-ass, right? So, just so you know, because I mean it's important, right? And this is kind of why I said kind of English is really weird, right? English is full of empire. You hear it in expressions. I mean, it's chock full of them. I mean, walking the straight and narrow. What utter bollocks. You should never do that. Actually, if you're actually walking, that's a sort of dynamic unbalancing going on. So you're actually kind of just barely keeping yourself from falling on the ground in the general direction of your walking. So if you want to move one of the feet forward and then followed by the next one, which is kind of the general idea of walking, right? You actually need to be in a state of imbalance all the time.
Oh.
But the English language will have, no, we need to be nice, orderly, and balanced, right? We need to be composed about these things. Actually, you can't even walk if you're not prepared to be in a state of imbalance, right? Now, it was kind of worse when kind of my dad and my granddad were young, because, I mean, in Sweden, we put imbalanced people away, right? And possibly you do that in America as well, right? Or young kids, you give Ritalin, right? Just because they have a bit stronger imagination than a normal kid, right? So
Still,
this is kind of the anti-adventure, right? So the Greeks actually had it right. When in a small Greek village, kind of 2,000 years ago, someone was really bonkers, right? They gathered the elders in the tribe, in the village, and then, is he actually bonkers, or is there a god having sort of lodged inside him somehow, right? That's just a wonderful kind of different approach to have, right? I mean, obviously me, and kind of according to any which normal standards, if I would tell you that I've done 14,000 Google Plus posts, that is kind of clearly deranged, right? I should be put away immediately, just by cause of that, right? It turns out that was actually a very sensible thing to do, because I've sort of figured out one thing or two how networks work, right? And I actually discovered that there's people on these networks. I mean, there's one thing to just sort of take it for granted. And I can sort of imagine it as if you are sitting there and somehow I can sort of pretend that I can speak English, and you can pretend that you actually understand, and you can pretend that you actually give a damn, and so on, right? So the charade goes on. But there's a difference if you actually discover actually through math and pattern languages that, whoa, people. So every last single comment you have, every last single interaction, every last single plus, reshare, anything, is a miracle, right? And I don't want to sort of sound all high and mighty, but it is. So again, kind of why I said come up with 10 ideas every day, write them down. Those two are, most people can do that because they hide away all your lovely poetry in the cupboard somewhere, right? So everyone has those, right? And you have read books, and you have loved, and you have lost, and you have this, and you have that, right? The thing you don't do is share, right? Because what would other people think if you did, right? Whoa, right? Someone would think, tell you what, people couldn't be asked to kind of no one cares, and that's a good thing, right? No one bloody cares. And this is the paradox. This is the good thing, because once you start sharing, then, hey, stuff. Sarah is sharing her Wednesday saps, right? Maybe I should join in and listen, right? Kristin is doing her wonderful, wonderful hashtags. Maybe I should just be inspired, right? Grizwald is kind of a huge inspiration all by himself. I mean, Grizwald Grimm, the audaciousness, right? It should be forbidden, right?
No, it should be encouraged.
No, I mean, I need to sort of give everyone now kind of a rounding up statement, because I sort of been. I promised myself I should sort of lapse into my kind of my gab, right? But I did. Sorry about that. So anyway, rounding up for free for all, right? Kind of a closing statement. Before that, I'm going to cram in. 1 month from now, there's going to be a much more serious thing where we provide the general verdict and all the top tips you can have about collections, right? So be sure to tune in 1 month from now in the conversation of Mind and Matter. So.
Yes, and we've already started preparing for it, so.
Great, great.
Possibly a community, another community, like a springing forth of another community from the conversation, possibly. Who knows?
We'll see.
Yeah, it's very secret yet, so you pretended you didn't hear what Kristin just said. Right?
No, I said that it was fine. Wait, I said let's go ahead and launch it. This was a compromise. I get to mention it.
All right, Kristin, but the secrecy builds interest. It's part of trust. Just trust us on this one.
But if no one knows anything about it, then it's not a secret and it's not exciting. Like, it's not a secret that is known.
Yeah.
So now it's a secret that's known.
Actually, we might start a community and just we're not going to tell anyone, right?
You just leave your own story. The store is responsible for this.
Well,
Or you might start a community and not tell you about it and just put you in there. I don't know. People do all sorts of crazy
you have to survive Grizwald's alternate timeline quest in order to actually get
Yes.
right, so
Yeah.
speaking of timelines, we did say this was going to be an hour, so we do need to wrap it up now.
Yeah.
I would like to leave everyone with the notion that, I can pull it out. I would like to leave everyone with the notion that every day is your adventure. Live it like that.
Like that. Like that.
For me, as long as you live, there's always a challenge and there's always adventures that you have to face, and you don't have to run it away. You just have to be positive and face it for the future. And that's what I'm like.
Lovely.
Well, guys, meeting you, Zara. I haven't really had a chance to say hi.
Hi.
Did you get muted?
I think she froze.
No, I mean the connection thing, right? I mean this is a huge
Yeah.
adventure as well. Kind of will it work? Well, we don't know, right? So,
Yeah.
And Sarah, famous last words to you.
Oh wait, I haven't said my last words. Shall
Well, I
put
guess
my last words?
Kristin's going first. Do your last words. Zara's going to bring it home. Go ahead.
Because Zara's usually you're usually last, right? I think.
There's no usual
so.
here, Kristin.
Oh.
So go for it.
Okay. Well, I just didn't want to like get left out of the adventure of the last words. Now I don't remember what I was gonna say. Okay. Adventure. Now I feel like I'm you, Grizz. Like I'm trying to pull it out. I did have something before I opened my big mouth. Yeah, it's not there now. So I'm just gonna say, live in each moment, be present, and breathe through it, because there's always gonna be something in the next moment.
Yeah. And music. You should have said something about music.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna talk about.
Wonderful kind of the whole kind of series of posts you've done recently is kind of one huge adventure, right? And you should have kickstarted that. I mean, bands I had forgotten that I like, right? I mean, so that's kind of a huge thing, right? I mean, you just went ahead and posted all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Yeah. Like, it is so awesome to be on this adventure, co-creating with people to make like these playlists together under a hashtag. And it becomes this thing that is searchable, and you can look and you can gather a whole playlist just through a hashtag that we're all using, because we're creating this together, and we're not trying to like make a collection and shove it in anyone's stream that doesn't want it there. Like, you know, we're making our own thing, and if you want to get involved, then go ahead and use the hashtag, and you're welcome to. Yeah, it's a great adventure getting to know people's like experiences and everything.
A huge important thing for anyone who's sort of badly consistent. To next month, this is a sneak preview. You should never, ever, under any circumstances and under pain of death, do collections unless they are resonant and they are playlists and they are fun and meaningful and valuable. So, but more beyond that cliffhanger is kind of a month from now, right? So, now, Sarah, the floor is yours.
It is. I think I'm sharing it with the kiddies today. Well, I just want to. Vivek brought up wonder. Wonder leads to adventure. Adventure leads to wonder. They work together. So, up your wonder.
Up your wonder.
Up
How do you
your
come up with
wonder.
those? I mean, that's fantastic, right? I mean, this is kind of, and on that awesome note, and next month, well, around a month from now, right? Probably a Thursday, and probably around this time, we're going to give you kind of the everything you need to know about collections. Unless you have sort of gotten completely bored about collections, and then we're going to give you the kind of complete thing about collections anyhow, right? Because that's what we'd like to do. So, signing off for now, Zara Altair, Kristin Drysdale, Grizwald Grimm, and me, John Kellden. Thanks for listening, and the adventure continues. And mad waves.
Up your
Mad
wonder.
waves. Over.
Up your wonder.